You find yourself consistently making sacrifices and conceding resources to someone, yet you realize they have never once issued a direct demand or even made a formal request. So why do you feel compelled to deliver what was never asked for? This is the dark psychological paradox of the Shadow Negotiator, calculated influence via environmental cues. Just think about that for a second. It's a really strange and unsettling feeling, isn't it? That feeling that you have to solve a problem that nobody ever actually gave you. You feel like you're in a negotiation, but the other person never says what they want, and somehow you still end up giving it to them. If that sounds even vaguely familiar, well, you're not going crazy, and there is a name for this invisible game being played. We're about to dive deep into this really subtle but incredibly powerful form of manipulation. It's all about these unspoken obligations. It's that feeling of having a debt you know you don't owe, but you feel this intense pressure to pay it back anyway. In this explainer, we're going to give you the roadmap not just to understand it, but to see it coming a mile away and know exactly how to handle it. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start by really defining that weird feeling of a debt you don't owe. Then, we'll introduce you to the Shadow Negotiator Archetype. Yep, that's the manipulator who gets their way without ever asking. We're going to break down their three-phase playbook, piece by piece. We'll get into the psychology of why it's so darn effective, and then, the most important part, we're going to arm you with the tools to take back control. And we'll wrap it all up with one simple, powerful takeaway. So, let's put a name to this invisible force, this feeling. We're going to formally introduce the concept of the Shadow Negotiator. And look, this isn't about one specific person, but it's a pattern of behavior, right? It's a framework for influence that works just under the surface of your conscious mind. All right, let's break this down because the words here are so important. Notice those keywords: covert, engineer, and moral obligation. Covert means it's hidden, it's sneaky, it's flying under your radar. Engineer means this is not an accident. They are actively, deliberately building an environment. And what's the goal? To trigger a moral obligation inside of you, so you feel like you have to give them what they want, even though they never actually asked for it. You see, this whole thing bypasses your logic. A direct request, you can think about that, you can say no. But a moral obligation, if you ignore that, it feels like a personal failure. And that brings us to the absolute core of their strategy: passive pressure. So why go through all this trouble? The answer is kind of genius in a dark way: plausible deniability. See, if you never make a request, you can never be told no. If you never say what you want, no one could ever call you selfish. The Shadow Negotiator gets exactly what they want, and they can always say, "Who, me? I never asked you to do that. That was your idea." They get the prize with absolutely zero risk. So how do they build this pressure? Well, they have three main tools in their toolbox. First, there's this suffering signal. You know what I'm talking about: the heavy sighs, the vague posts about what a tough day it's been. They're not asking for help, they're just broadcasting distress, and they know that any empathetic person is going to jump in and say, "What's wrong? How can I help?" Second, strategic victimization. They'll tell you stories about how a former boss was so unhelpful or a friend was so selfish. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. It's setting a trap, making you think, "Oh, I don't want to be like that person," so you overcompensate by being extra generous. And third, the false choice. This is when they frame what they want as some kind of heavy burden they're just gonna have to carry. "I guess I'll just have to work all weekend to get this done." That's not a fact. It's an invitation for you to say, "No way, let me help you." It's designed to trigger your inner hero complex. Now, these three pillars, they aren't just used at random, not at all. They are part of a very predictable, very repeatable three-phase mechanism. You can think of it as their playbook. And trust me, once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. The whole cycle works in 3 stages. It starts with what we call atmospheric priming. That's the setup. That leads to the obligation trigger. This is the key moment of the non-ask. And it all ends with the voluntary surrender, which is where you hand over exactly what they wanted from the start. Let's dig into each one. Phase 1 is all about setting the stage. The Shadow Negotiator is using those suffering signals and victim stories to create an emotional atmosphere that's just thick with need and stress. It's like they're changing the emotional weather in the room. They aren't going after your logic, they're going straight for your empathy. They're priming you, getting you ready to be concerned, putting you on high alert for a problem you can solve. This can go on for days or even weeks, just slowly building this backdrop of their struggle. Okay, now for phase 2. This is the linchpin of the whole thing, the obligation trigger, or what we call the non-ask. This is where they say something like, "It's fine, I'll figure out how to pay for it somehow." Or, "Don't you worry about me, I'll just skip lunch to get your project done." Do you hear that? These are statements of selfless struggle. And after all that atmospheric priming, a statement like this lands like a ton of bricks. It's designed to make you feel like there's a social imbalance, something that is just not right. And your brain starts screaming, "That's not fair, someone has to fix this." And you feel this urgent need to be that someone. And that, of course, leads right into the final phase, your voluntary surrender. Because you've been primed and triggered, you're the one who steps up and says, "No, please, let me help with that." Or "Don't be ridiculous, I can take care of that for you. You offer the solution." And that's checkmate. The Shadow Negotiator accepts, usually with this big show of reluctance. "Oh, are you sure I couldn't possibly ask you to do that?" Which just makes you want to insist even more. And boom, they get what they wanted, and since you offered, it was your idea. Their plausible deniability is now rock solid. They've successfully manufactured your generosity. So, we've covered the what and the how, but the really big question is, why is this so incredibly effective? The answer is fascinating. It lies in a fundamental psychological conflict that the Shadow Negotiator knows how to exploit perfectly. It's a clash between what they want and how you are naturally wired. And this lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have the manipulator's goal, impunity, which is just a fancy word for getting away with it, right? Total freedom from being held accountable. But on the other side, you have your vulnerability, the harmony drive. See, most of us, we hate social tension. That awkward, passive-aggressive vibe they create, it's deeply uncomfortable. We have this primal need to just make it go away and restore a sense of balance. And the Shadow Negotiator is counting on that. They create the tension, and then they just sit back and wait for your harmony drive to kick in and make a sacrifice just to get rid of that awful feeling. So here's the key. You're not conceding to them. You're conceding to your own discomfort. You're basically paying them to stop making you feel bad. All right, we have a very clear picture of the problem. We get the archetype, we get the playbook, we get the psychology. So now for the best part, the solution. This next section is your defensive toolkit. This is all about how you shift from being a passive target to an active, aware player who simply cannot be manipulated this way. Okay, the core defense strategy is something called rigid linguistic adherence. Now, that sounds complicated, but the idea is actually super simple. You are going to stop playing the game of hints and unspoken cues. Your new rule is to operate only on direct, literal language. The goal here is to drag their unspoken shadow request out of the darkness and into the bright light of day, where you can actually look at it and deal with it for what it is. You are refusing to do their dirty work for them. And this whole defense is built on 3 really simple, really practical rules. Number 1, the direct request requirement. Number 2, validating the surface statement. And number 3, the refusal to mind read. Let's walk through each one. Rule number 1 is your new foundation. It's like a binary switch you're going to install in your brain. From this moment on, if it is not a direct, explicit, verbal request, it doesn't exist, period. That heavy sigh, it doesn't exist. That vague complaint about how overwhelmed they are, doesn't exist. You have to train yourself to simply not register it as a call to action. I know it'll feel weird at first because it goes against everything we're taught about being polite, but it is the only way to short-circuit this entire manipulation. And that brings us to rule number 2, which is your new script. You have to respond only to the surface statement, the literal words they said, and nothing more. So when they say, "Oh, I'm so stressed," your old programming wants you to say, "Oh no, what can I do to help?" That's you taking the bait. Your new response is a calm, simple, "I'm sorry to hear you're feeling stressed." That's it. You acknowledge their feelings, so you're not being cruel, but you don't accept any responsibility for solving them. You respond to the words, not the hidden agenda. And finally, rule number 3. Now this one's the toughest, I'm not gonna lie, but it is also the most powerful. You must refuse to mind read. This means you have to learn to tolerate that awkward, tense atmosphere they've created. You have to consciously sit in that discomfort and not offer a solution. This is the ultimate power move because it completely breaks their model. When you don't rush in to fix things, you back them into a corner. Now they only have 2 choices, either drop it or actually use their words and make a direct request, the one thing their entire strategy is built to avoid. And in that moment, all the power shifts right back to you. So we have gone from this confusing, nagging feeling all the way to a clear set of tools to defend yourself. Let's bring it all home with the final empowering takeaway. This is about knowing once and for all how to break this manipulative cycle for good. So just remind yourself, the Shadow Negotiator is the manipulator who gets what they want without ever having to ask. Their pattern is always the same. Atmospheric priming creates an obligation trigger, which leads to your voluntary surrender. The most important thing to remember is that just being aware of this pattern is what breaks the loop. By demanding direct requests and only validating what's actually said, you take away their most powerful weapon, that plausible deniability. You're no longer guessing what they want, you're waiting for a clear question, and in that space, you reclaim your freedom to choose. So, what's the one thing you need to walk away with? The single lesson that will change everything? It's this: you are not responsible for solving problems that were never given to you. Let that sink in. The entire house of cards, that is the shadow negotiation, it collapses the very moment you decide to live by one simple, liberating rule. Treat a non-ask as a non-event.